Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.
Third Degree the Podcast is brought to you by soccer90.com. Third Degree listeners get 20% off when you order at the shop at soccer90.com. Get all your FC Dallas, U.S. national team, international club gear. Soccer 90's got it all. Jersey scarves, tees, clubs from all around the world. And if you order today, soccer90.com, use code Third Degree, get yourself 20% off your order. And now Third Degree is happy to welcome today's special guest host. Please, everybody, welcome to the show, Owen Newkirk.
And hello, FC Dallas Curious fans. Welcome to another edition of Third Degree, the podcast. Tonight, it's episode number 192. Now, it might not be tonight. It might be day or even afternoon or early evening if you're currently listening to this. But either way, it's the first Third Degree podcast of 2023. So even though Larry David has very specific guidelines of how long you can say Happy New Year to people in social company, Happy New Year to all the FC Dallas fans out there. If you didn't recognize my voice, I am now the returning champion, so to speak. Owen Newkirk filling in once again for the great Peter Welpton, who at some point, just like the guys that won the World Cup, have to come off of their extended holiday and get back to work. But we'll get into more of that later. Right now, it's time to introduce the guy who you would never accuse of being from Watford, our very own Mad Hatter, Dan Crooke. Happy New Year, Dan.
Happy New Year. That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said about me.
I can't imagine that you'd, they're from Bedfordshire, right?
Certainly am.
Yeah, so you wouldn't ever want to be on the other side of that rivalry.
Nah, that'd be awful. You'd be self-loathing, want to change manager every 5 minutes.
Well, there you have it, folks. The Hatters, and the question is, do you have the mug, Dan? Do you have the mug that says a Hatter supporter on it?
I have a couple.
Nice. It's not the self-deprecating one that says it's the only cup I'll ever win.
Nah, we're going to win a cup this season. We're going to end up in the Premier League, apparently.
All right. I'm looking forward to that. And that giggle in the background, which I'm glad I elicited a little bit from him, is your hero, my hero, Dan's hero, everyone's hero, celebrating his 26th season of covering FC Dallas for Third Degree. The founder, the editor, the creator of all the things that you see and hear here. It's the great Buzz Carrick. Happy New Year, Buzz.
Thanks, Owen. That's Happy New Year to you. That's the longest intro I've ever had. This is indeed season 26. I was shocked to realize this is the 5th season of the podcast, which is amazing.
Goes by quickly, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Just like children growing up.
Yeah, the first season of the podcast was not a full season, admittedly, but this will be Series 5, basically. This is, in fact, the first episode of Series 5. So welcome to Series 5.
Well, I hope you enjoyed those intros because that's all the time that I was booked for. So you guys enjoy the rest of the pod, and I'll talk
Cheers,
to you
Owen. See you later.
Yeah. Thanks, pal.
That's the best showing I've had all night. All right. No, but in all seriousness or semi-seriousness, Buzz is spearheading what we call a speculation podcast tonight, as we're going to go through a lightning round of questions about FC Dallas, where I'm going to pose some question, and I will alternate between the two contestants, Dan and Buzz. They'll give their answers. I'll throw mine in. We'll all see just how serious or not serious we're taking it, which is kind of the fun of it. And by the end of it, you guys will again wonder why you asked me to help when this thing pushes 3 hours.
No, it'll be good. I mean, look, the preseason hasn't even started yet, so some of these questions we're taking our guesses at, and so this is fun. But also, we're putting our soccer brains to work here and see if we can see how good we can be at throwing darts at the wall and coming up with answers that tries to be right or not. So, not intended to be repetition on the line predictions, but intended to be like, let's go put our brains out there and see what we can come up with for the season.
Well, you know how MLS teams, in fact, most major league teams on social media now have been beating the drum on receipts. Let's hope there aren't any after this one. But Dan, we heard Buzz. Would you like to also have an opening statement before we get to the action and fun?
Sure, why not? That was
All
it.
right. All right. That's exactly what I expected
I knew
too.
that was coming.
That is Daniel of Bedfordshire, ladies and gentlemen. Perhaps even Sir Daniel. So, all right, let's begin because Buzz is celebrating the 26th season now, beginning the calendar year. His fiscal year, if you will, has begun. We begin tonight, Buzz, with who will be the starting right back for FC Dallas on opening night, or it is actually an evening match, February 25th, against the killer Death Loons of Minnesota United.
I would assume at this point that Ima Tomasi will manage to hold down that spot until the regular season, barring injury. While I'm sure that there's massive interest in what Giovanni will do when you're paying $1 million or whatever it is for that guy, it's very difficult to walk in and take over a starting job as a 21-year-old in the space of, a month and a half. So Ima Tomasi.
Dan, do you agree or disagree?
Kind of. They're going to be doing a lot of traveling in preseason. There's no guarantee that Giovanni's going to be able to go participate in all of that, or really when he gets into town even. So you got to think maybe, just for the fact that he's going to be here from day one of preseason, it lends itself a little easier to give the start to Emma.
I agree. I think Ima's had enough of a resume to be the starter until somebody pushes him off the crest of the hill or the summit, so to speak. The big question is, will our thoughts change between next Wednesday when the players report for physicals, or in Dan's case, in the last 2 minutes or 30 seconds? But, I mean, there is a possibility that Giovanni Jesus shows incredible talent, skill, composure right out of the gate in training camp. It's going to be hard for him to do that. We don't even know the full preseason schedule as far as matches they're playing. We know that there's going to be at least one behind closed doors down in Houston, but we'll find out later. I think, guys, the big question on that will be, will Ima be starting at the end of the season? Because I'm not sure I'm willing to put my reputation on the line, but he very well could be.
You're skipping ahead to later questions there, Owen.
Oh, I jumped right ahead. So let's go down to the next question, which is only one position over. Who will start at right center back on opening night?
I'm going to go with Ibiaga for the simple fact that, we've seen... Wow. Nico's name escapes me then. I knew he said Lucci and Chewy at the same time.
I almost called him Gabriel Jesus already. So very close
somehow
on that one.
We've seen at times Nico likes a little bit more of a conservative, experienced approach to his centre-back pairings. So that just feels like it kind of lends itself a little more than Nkosi in some ways.
Yeah, this is a good shout, but I'm going to stick with Nkosi Tafare, who, was in all but in name was finishing last season as a starter. So I think Nkosi will get the run. I think it's time to give him. I actually thought it was time to give him the starting job a year ago. Ibiaga at 30-31 is insurance policy in my mind. They want to find out at Nkosi now turning 25. I think it is. I say that without looking. Is he ready to be the guy? So I think he'll get the start at the beginning of the year, Nkosi. I think it's his spot to lose.
Yeah, I'm going to go with you, Buzz. I don't remember Ibiaga watching him that closely in the last couple of seasons, but I'm kind of the same mind that he is brought in for depth and to spell Jose Martinez if he needs to be, give maybe Nkosi a night off if they really feel that's the case. But to not spark a longer conversation just with this question, that's more of we're happy with what we have. We would definitely love to improve it, but until that point, that what we have is what we go with. So I'm going with Nkosi as well.
Fair enough.
That goes to the one I got ahead of myself with, which is what player, we'll start with Buzz, who is going to be a starter today, or at least at the start of the season, won't be by the end of the season.
Yep, I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to say Jose Antonio Martinez by the end of the season will not be a starter. I think that between either Ibiaga or Nkosi Tafare playing well enough, this summer they'll go out and get a top flight center back, and I think Martinez's leg issues will sort of catch up with him in the end, and that by the end of the season, someone else will have supplanted him as a starter.
I want to say someone else, but that's the really.
It's the best answer, isn't it?
It is. I mean, barring a sale or a big purchase, in centre midfield or at the 6 or somewhere like that, it is the kind of obvious that when they get the DP spot open to go after another centre back.
Who was your thought there, Dan, that you were gonna consider until I said that?
Part of me was thinking. We've kind of gone back and forth over the idea of Paxton maybe getting pushed out eventually.
That is a bold pick.
Not necessarily wanting to, but
Yeah.
there's only so many.
Yeah. So many spots.
So barring major catastrophic injury, and hopefully that doesn't happen, but the three most likely in my mind are, and I was going to say Jose Martinez, so I'll put that out there. Buzz has got me, on that one, would be that spot, the right back position of Ima and Giovanni Jesus,
Yeah,
or
totally fair. Yep.
the 6. Just because you could see, even though it seems like it's Edwin's to lose because he has, as Buzz has said on many occasions, the much higher ceiling. He's younger, he's still developing. We know Facu is where he is, but we also saw that there were times that he got the start and Nico really liked him. One that really comes out of left field, guys, is the DP right center back that they go get, or hopefully, actually, it would make sense that they go get a left center back for Martinez, so you have Nkosi and the big center back they bring in. But what if it's Jose Martinez and the upgrade at right center back? Just a speculative thing out there.
Certainly a viable. They're a lot harder to find left center backs than right.
That's what I'm
center backs.
thinking.
And
Yeah.
obviously, coach really likes Martinez. I was just putting it down to a combination of age and the thing we've talked about, which is the fall off from the center backs last year late in games. For Hedges, it was because he was a little longer in the tooth. Martinez is because of the leg issues. So that's kind of why I was leaning more that way, and because I think that both of the guys they have on the right, Ibiaga and Tafari, are pretty serviceable. Maybe not Matt Hedges prime, but serviceable. So, I think all the answers we come up with are legitimate, considerations.
All right. Dan, you get to lead off this next one. Who will be the next player sold by FC Dallas? So I'm presuming that this means a player currently under contract, not out of a contract and let walk away.
Okay. I'm going to go not a blockbuster, but I'm actually going to say Brandon Savania.
Sold Brandon Savania. Wow.
Yeah, not necessarily a blockbuster by any means, but you've got to think his place in the roster is increasingly lessening. In the midfield, you've got they love damn it, names South
Siki.
African fella Siki.
Siki and Sabalang.
You've got Leggett right now. Okay, maybe not a long-term thing. Brandon's time has been so up and down that at some point they've got to look, at some point it feels like maybe they look at the roster and say, is this guy going to be a championship winner at any point? Or where does the development stop?
Buzz?
Yeah, I think my answer might surprise people. I'm going to say it's going to be Hadir O'Brien.
Interesting.
I think that the young players they've brought in at the wing positions are going to show enough that Hadir will become sort of surplus. And he doesn't have a whole lot of contract left, but there's definitely some teams from his home country and other places in South America that are interested in him. So I think there's a chance this summer that he could be a guy that could be sold for not a lot of money rather than letting his deal run out. I think there's a chance he's enough in demand that he could be sold.
That
Crap.
makes-
I didn't realize sold and traded were two separate questions.
I tried to sort of hint that, Dan. He didn't catch that.
Let's put a pin in that for 2 questions because I want to get back into Dan's answer in 2. I think there's one or maybe two potential blockbusters out there. And it may not happen first. I think, Buzz, your answer of O'Brien might actually be the most possible for the actual question, which is the next one. But if you think about blockbusters, one, it would be Jesus Ferreira, who continues to develop and is looking at Europe, and if he keeps scoring at the clip he's doing, we'll get to that one too. That's probably a good one. But I'm going to go with Martin Paz. I think that he had an incredible year last year from relative obscurity from the MLS viewing, right? Not saying that he wasn't known in Europe, but he definitely took a step up in his global profile with a very good season. If he continues to play like he did, and there's no reason to think he wouldn't, being European, which I would assume would make work visa issues for a European transfer easier, I think Martin Paz could be a guy that Dallas could both be happy to have and elevate their position and then profit from in the next couple of seasons. It might not be right away, but he's the one that I'm wondering about.
Yeah, that's a good shout.
Okay, next one we go to Buzz to lead off. Who will be the next player loaned out by FC Dallas? This is a perfect question for you, by the way.
Yeah, I think it's going to be Isaiah Parker. I think Isaiah Parker is ready to advance past MLS Next Pro. I think that league will no longer help him. I think that Marco Farfan, however, is very, very good and will be very, very difficult to get in ahead of. They do, of course, need a way to spell him and give him some time off, Farfan, that is. But you don't want to have a 19, 20-year-old Generation Adidas player stagnate on the bench either. You want him playing. So I'm going to predict that Dallas will loan him out for the bulk of this, or at least a good half of this season to somebody.
Dan, what do you think?
That is a solid answer. I won't have to agree with.
Yeah, it probably makes the most sense. The only other thought that maybe could float out there is, and maybe he's okay still playing at North Texas, would be someone like Colin Smith, where he also is getting better and maybe needs to get pushed a little further along, because the other guys that might not be first choice in the first team but are around, they probably need for depth more than they need to send out. So to me, Parker for sure, maybe a guy like Colin Smith second.
Yeah, and to back up your Smith point, there are two right backs on the first team in Giovanni and Tuamasi.
Exactly.
Whereas Isaiah might be your second choice on a real two deep, and you're looking at Nolan Norris, who's probably not ready, to be contributing to the first team. But again, I come back to Colin Smith. I 100% agree is a legit possibility, and it's also just as likely. I just lean a tiny bit more into Isaiah because of the want to get him high volume of games. Goodness, my throat's going fast.
Okay, so we'll move it right along. And fortunately for Buzz, this question goes right back to Dan, who answered the one 2 questions ago, and he can recycle it if he wants. And Dan, that's who's the most likely FC Dallas player to be traded?
Yeah, so I'm going to switch my answer. That's going to be Brandon. And then for the sold, I'll just go with the super obvious Justin Che.
That makes sense. I mean, I would love to see Justin Che come back. We're going to talk about Che and Sealy about 6 or 7 questions, but Cervena seems like the guy that he's clearly too good to go on a loan to USL Championship. And if he's not going to get time behind the 8s in the midfield, then you might, and if he's frustrated with his playing time, which he might be, then that's sort of the next step, isn't it, Buzz?
Yeah, I think Brandon is the most tradable asset at a position. In my opinion, they have 3 players. Because to me, Siki, Brandon, and Paxton all play the same linking position. Some people like to put Paxton more as the free, but I don't think that's right. And they like to put Siki more at that free. I also don't think that's correct. Now, how people look at it can be different, of course. But for me, there's 3 guys at that one spot. Brandon, being an American, is more tradable, even though he's younger than Siki, he's got more experience than Siki. There are stretches where he's been really, really good in this league as a stretch run starter. So for me, Brandon's the most tradable and the most likely to be traded.
Okay, on to the next one, because we all are in agreement on that one.
Yeah, we need more argument.
Okay. This one could be, because I have to make sure we get a qualifier from Buzz and his term first. Will the FCD defense hold up in 2023? Do you mean health-wise, or do you mean compared to their defensive record of 2022?
Compared to the defensive record of 2022.
Okay. Will they
it
be as
same-
stingy this year as last year? Okay.
Yeah, because keeping in mind they were one of the top defenses in the whole league, or the second best defense in club history by goals against. I think the answer is going to be no to that. You're at right center back, you're looking at a new starter no matter which way you slice it. Right back is in contention. That's probably actually will make it better, whichever guy wins that job. But I think it will be difficult for Martin Paz to produce the exact same high level performances last year. It's just tough. So I think there will be a little bit of a step back in terms of the defense, pending, of course, late season perhaps it getting better if you do get another big time center back in there, or as the team solidifies. But I think it'll take a step back. Not massive, but a step back.
Dan?
Yeah, I think they were at such a high level last season. You're losing, regardless of Matt Hedges' physical state, his organizational leadership is a massive loss. It's a massive hole to fill. You've got, the possibility of right back chopping and changing a little bit, unstabilizing defense. Farfan's played more games than he's ever played before. Does his body go through the motions a little bit, or does he kind of come fighting through? Jose, does his body do that weird lock-up thing constantly? Do we get, Nkosi seems to do far better when he gets a good stretch of games. If Nico is tinkering a little bit with centre-back and he's not getting that regular start, we might not see peak Nkosi. So there's a lot of questions about it, and just again, they were at such a high level last season. That's such a difficult thing to such a difficult level to maintain. They'll still be good either way, just not as good.
For the sake of argument and devil's advocate, I'm going to take the other side on this, only because you guys have both already articulated this, and 3 in a row, it's going to get a little bit repetitive. I'm going to say yes, it will hold up for the exact opposite reason that Buzz said about Martin Paz. He's only 24. He won't turn 25 until, I believe, mid-May, which is exceedingly young for professional goalkeepers. So he still has the best years, not just in front of him, but maybe even 5 years in front of him as far as his development and getting even better and better. So I think expecting Martin Paz to be as good as he was last year is not out of the question at all. I think that adding Nkosi Tafare on a regular basis changes the dynamic. You lose the Hedges reading of the game, the organization, but what you gain in youthful speed, recovery ability, that those last-minute tackles that he can get to that nobody else could on that center-back pairing is going to allow for them to make some mistakes but also recover from them. And, of course, I know there's been some debate about it. I think he's actually quite strong defensively in the air, as long as they work out there who's defending who and doesn't leave somebody wide open for a free header. Having Farfan not getting used to the system but being there and starting with Ema, and having a coach in Nico who's already established his team, now we know, we were talking about who's going to start in these positions. We pretty much know what the starting 11 is going to look like, we think, going into this, unless some roster move in training camp changes things. So sure. I actually think that the defense will hold up, because I don't think Nico's going to drastically change his style of play, and there'll be more familiarity within the roster.
I'd love for you to be right. That would be great.
Wouldn't it be nice?
Yeah, it would be nice. Yeah.
How about the other end? We talk about defense. Let's talk about who's going to lead this team in scoring in 2023.
Whose turn is it? I can't remember.
I believe we go to Dan for this one.
I've got to say Jesus. That's just a logical answer there.
Yeah, I think Jesus is too obvious in this case. This is a holdover question for many years. Last year, Peter said O'Brien. I'm just going to point that out real quick.
He was for the first game.
He was for a while.
And then he didn't score again for what, 5 months?
I
6
think
months?
it's too easy to be Jesus is the answer. Yep.
Yeah, I think so too. I want to say somebody like Alan Velasco just for the sake of fun, but the way this team plays, everything gets funneled through the wings into Jesus, and so he's going to be the one that takes all the shots. So,
Yep.
That being said, what about a guy like Alan Velasco, Buzz? How many assists will he have this year?
10. I think he hits double figures. Be the first player in a while since like Michael Barrios had like 15, like maybe 4 or 5 years ago. So I think he'll get to over 10.
Dan?
I'm going to be even more enthusiastic about him and say 15.
Whoa.
Just because MLS assists.
Because of the second assist?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you can expect a step forward for Velasco in like team concept play, and that'll lead to more assists. As Dan and I both obviously agree. I just don't have 15 on the cards. 10.
I'm going to say the only guy to challenge Velasco will be our baby, because I think Sebastian Lletget is going to rack up assists as we saw him do at the end of the season.
Right.
And I think he could be the only one that surpasses Velasco for the season total.
So the actual answer to the question is less than Lletget, is what you're saying.
Less than Lletget.
Fair answer.
Velasco's going to be really good. Yeah, I'm going to say Lletget over Velasco, and Jesus, because he likes to do both, is going to be third.
Okay.
All right.
Well, don't forget you got Areola on the other wing, who had 7 last year. So.
And I mean, the way they score by committee actually makes it hard to figure out who else would be the leading scorer besides Jesus.
Right.
But from an assist standpoint, that's also kind of in the same boat, isn't it?
Yeah, Lletget's a fair shout.
Okay. So we move on to who do you guys think will be the breakout player of 2023? And I believe this one goes to Dan. So we're going to give it to Dan. Dan, who do you think is going to break out in 2023?
Oh, wow. There isn't really anyone left to break out. Unless Bernie gets in the team and tears it up.
You can say Bernie. Bernie's your answer? Sticking to that?
Yeah, Bernie off the bench. He'll become the super sub.
All right. My answer is Edwin Cirillo. I think that relative to last year when he was splitting time with Facundo, I think Edwin will become a dominant lock starter. And by the end of the year, we'll be wondering why in the world anyone thought that it should be Facundo at some point.
I hope that's the case, because every time I want to champion Cirillo, there's something that makes me go, I don't know. And then you guys were talking about Carlos Guerrezo again the other day. He keeps getting brought up for a reason.
Oh, well,
and
yes, but yeah.
Yes, because he's outstanding, and because that maybe with a little Thiago Santos, there really hasn't been that type of level of 6 in quite some time since Guerrezo left.
Yeah, but Guerrezo costs $4 million.
Right.
And that's not happening. Here's the thing. Edwin became a 6, and I think people are just learning this, even though I've talked about it before, very late in his academy career. It wasn't until he was a U17 that he converted from wing to 6. So you're talking about a guy that learned the 6 position in 2 seasons, 17 years old, 18 years old, and then became good enough to get a homegrown deal. And then since then, every single season, he's made a steady step in his progression. Every single time. Every single time we've pointed out, hey, he made a progression. Here's the next phase of his progression. He's proceeded to do that. So I just have 100% belief that the next step of his progression will happen, because it has happened every single year of his career. Next one's going to happen, and he'll be locked down after that.
So for me, that makes a lot of sense. The Bernard Comungo is my first. When Dan was saying that, it was at the tip of my tongue. I'm going, it's got to be Bernie, right? Because he sort of already showed us something, and I loved what I saw, and then he got hurt right in the worst possible time. But I have a thought that, it could be Giovanni Jesus. Maybe he's the guy, and everybody goes, wow, this is an upgrade. He's young. Sure. And this could be a lot of fun. You said he's in under 22 initiative, Buzz?
Yes.
Okay, so that could be really exciting. But I'm going to go with a different slant. I'm going to pick Alan Velasco. And you say, how can he possibly break out? This might be overly positive, considering I just said that Sebastian Lletget is going to out assist him. But I'm going to be willing to change my mind in seconds. I think Alan Velasco this year, now that he knows the league, knows his team, is going to become one of the dominant attacking players in Major League Soccer, and that's going to be his breakout from just a young guy who was, cash was splashed to this is must-see TV. You've got to come watch this kid.
Well, it would certainly be exciting, and I agree with you guys on Bernie. By the way, that's the reason why I think Hadir was the guy that's going to be sold, was because of Bernie. But I can see what you're saying on Velasco. If he puts himself in the MVP level conversation, that's what you can call that a breakout.
That's a breakout, right?
Yeah,
it's a
absolutely.
step up in level from where he's at.
Absolutely.
Okay, now this is the tough one because, of course, there's not going to be any receipts here whatsoever. FC Dallas's position of finish, meaning where are they in the standings at the end of 2023, Buzz?
Yeah, not people are going to be mad at me again about this one. The thing is that this comes back to the podcast last week, and let's not do 30 minutes on it, but the fact that the team hasn't gotten any better. The team is at best case scenario, the team is going to enter this season where they finished last season. That's not better. If you're going to wait for the team to progress, wait for the youngsters to progress, that's a viable strategy. It's not overnight. Everybody else is going to get better. The Galaxy are better. Austin's going to be better. LAFC is for sure better. So I have them in the playoffs fighting to try and get that home field. So 4th, 5th, going down to the wire. That's where I have them.
Dan, Mr. Sunshine, what do you have?
Yeah, I think the problem you have is that 4th to 7th is such a crapshoot every year. This previous year, FC Dallas on the very top end of that. But yeah, like Buzz says, it's just, until there's some movement in preseason, which FC Dallas has historically done very lately, and again in the summer, it's hard to say. And it's hard to say that they're better than some of the teams that are catching up. So yeah, it's anywhere really between 4th and 7th.
Okay, so that's a range. I guess we won't put your feet too much to the fire, but I'm going to push back.
Just for argument's sake, say 5th or 6th then.
Okay, so that's still a range, but I'll accept it. Buzz, I'm going to take the counter just again for the sake of our listeners, and I'm going to push back on your notion that everybody else is getting better, because if you look at what happened with the Colorado Rapids last year, not everybody gets better from one year to the next. And I took a dig at Colorado. It was fun. And I'm going to tell you,
they were getting better.
They did.
Yeah.
And not everybody's going to improve who wasn't very good, Sporting Kansas City, even if they did get Cristiano Ronaldo. So, or Ronaldo. I don't know where Ronaldo is. I am going to say 2nd place in the Western Conference. Why am I going to sound like an FC Dallas homer? The reason is LAFC is ridiculous. They added Aaron Long. They have a ridiculous attacking group of talent. And we saw the guys that they added late in the season, they just kept getting better. I don't think anybody catches LAFC in the West during the course of a season. But I don't think that Houston Dynamo is going to suddenly look better. No. Maybe they will, but I don't think so. I don't think Colorado is suddenly going to go, oh, last year was a lapse in judgment. We're fine. And I think there might be trouble brewing down in Broccoli Land, a.k.a. the Austin FC. Again, you don't want to do 30 minutes, so let's not talk about the U.S. men's national team story and drama at the moment. Okay. But that involves somebody it's high up in Austin's front office. And so I see why not FC Dallas. They're going to make an ad this summer is my prediction. Mm-hmm. They're going to make a big addition somewhere in the summer window that's going to take them from that range that Dan gave us and push them ahead of Austin FC and be in 2nd place at the end of the year. I'm going bold, guys, because there's no receipts.
Well, I like where your head's at. So
all right. Well, at least we're trying for that. Okay, Dan, you get the next one to start. Will FC Dallas win MLS Cup in the next 3 years?
No. Just to be the eternal optimist, no.
Buzz, anything to add there?
I'm not going to predict that they will, but I think that the current run is setting up for not this season, but for 2024 to make a legit run at it. Because as you say, add a key piece this summer, this next winter, you'll have Facundo off the books. That money, Haro's be gone. That money will be spent in the summer. You'll have probably O'Brien's coming off the books and some young guys coming through. There's a setup for a attempt in 2024 to push it over the line. So that's your best shot. But MLS Cup is such a crapshoot. It's so hard to win. So I'm not going to predict it either. I'm going to say no also, but I'm going to say 2024 they get the closest Western Final or even into the MLS Cup in 2024.
Yeah, I think the closest I would agree to that is they could make it to the MLS Cup final in the next 3 years. But to say, yes, definitively they're going to win one is, I think it's impossible to say because so much of the run is catching that lightning in a bottle at the right moment because it is a one-off. It's not, well, they're going to be the Supporter Shield winners, and so then, of course, they'll be the best team. And, you know, LAFC was pushed to the brink, and they still found a way to get it done. They could have easily lost. So to say for sure, I can't do that. But I would be with you guys. At least a conference final in 24, 25, if not pushing MLS Cup. And then from there, it's a roll of the dice.
Right.
Okay. That being said, what about U.S. Open Cup? Buzz, are they going to be any better? One of the big issues coming into this year or going from last year was depth, and you need depth, especially early in U.S. Open Cup play.
Yeah, Dallas is a team that's top-heavy in older players and then bottom-heavy in young players. So when you get into those cup games and you want to play a bunch of the younger players, that doesn't help you very much. This year, because they finished in the top half of the table, or the top 5 or 6 of the table, they come into the Open Cup in the second round of MLS teams entering. That means when they come in, you're going to be facing other MLS teams and the really good USL teams that are left. So I'm going to say they'll win one game and then lose in their second game because they'll also have the Leagues Cup to deal with.
Oh, I forgot about Ligas Cup. Yep.
The Gold Cup is this summer. So they'll win one game and lose in their second game. That's what I have for the Open Cup this year.
Dan, will they beat FC Tulsa this year as well?
Yeah, this year's the revenge tour. I'm going to make a bold prediction that they actually miss playing against Sporting Kansas City in the Open Cup for the first time in God knows how long before losing on penalties in the semi-final.
Ooh,
nice.
Wow. So they're going to go on a run then. I mean, look, they probably should have won that game against Sporting KC and didn't, and then it was probably
That's been
okay.
the story of my life.
Right. I mean, I guess if we go back to looking at last year, it was probably for the sake of their season was okay that they didn't have all those extra games.
Well, if you want to know, if fans want to know why it seems like Dallas loses Sporting Kansas City in the Open Cup all the time, it's for 2 reasons. One is that the brackets are all now done geographically, so that means you're
by regions, right?
By regions. And number 2, unlike Dallas, who say they take the Open Cup seriously, but then only kind of do, Sporting Kansas City really does take the Open Cup very, very seriously. So they always go deep and they always play their best team. That's why Dallas loses to Sporting Kansas City all the time in the Open Cup.
I mean, I think the hope is now you've got St. Louis, you've got Austin. It's a little more breathing space. Yeah. Yep.
Some variety wouldn't hurt in this. And you know what? Dan's not that far off because if they could just get by Sporting KC, why couldn't they go to the semifinals and keep on a run? So I'm going to go with that they are going to beat a couple of USL championship sides because they're going to have a lucky draw and end up playing San Antonio and Tulsa. And then they'll end up
in the same game.
Maybe perhaps in the same game. It's going to be wild. But then eventually they'll bow out because of guys on the Gold Cup roster and everything else, and they just be a little thin. So let's say 4th round.
Okay.
Out of that. Okay, I almost got into this earlier because we were talking about players on loan, but we go to Dan to start. Will either Dante Seeley or Justin Che return to the FC Dallas roster this summer? Like physically, not just end alone and then get sold. Will they actually come back and suit up for FC Dallas? I think is the question, right, Buzz?
Yes.
Okay.
Seeley, yes. Che, no. Dante's dad, obviously, is still here, works with the club in many ways. Che's family were very big on the whole, nope, he's being sold, he's going to Celtic, he's going to Bayern, he's going to Hoffenheim, he's going to whoever. I think there'll be a little bit too much egg on the face to come back at this point, whereas maybe less so for Seeley. He's got a little bit more roots here, I guess.
Yeah, Seeley, I agree. Seeley comes back and Che does not. Seeley is not a lock starter for PSV Jung. He only starts half the games. He hasn't even played in every game, but he starts basically half the games this season so far, and he only has 1 goal. So he has not progressed enough, in my opinion, that PSV will want to buy him. So I think he'll come back. I think this club, is when they foresee the idea of moving on from O'Brien. Yes, we love Kamungo. Sure, Tariq Scott, phenomenal homegrown signing. But again, remember that kid's 17 going on 18. He's a couple of years away. He's where Paxton was, when Jesus, when those guys for the first couple seasons didn't play at all. So you can see Dante Sealy coming back. As I predicted, they're selling O'Brien this summer. Sealy comes back, takes that spot, competes with Kamungo for time off the bench, but can right away factor in playing time when they bring him back.
So I agree with both of you on that. I'm going to just take a little slant for the sake of fun and variety. I'm going to say that unless O'Brien is sold, that's not going to happen. I think O'Brien may get sold, but I don't think Sealy comes back to be the fourth guy on the right side. So I think he's going to end up getting loaned out again somewhere else,
right.
Maybe even somewhere else at a smaller club in Europe, just because he's going to say to FC Dallas, there's nowhere for me to play right now because he doesn't play on the left, even though, Buzz, as you said many times, you should be able to play both sides.
Yeah, he does not do as much on the left. He definitely is a very right-sided guy, which is funny because I don't think he's left-footed. I think he's right-footed. But he just, for some reason, he's never played much volume on that side. That's a fair shout. Listen, my O'Brien being sold thing is only, because of some of the reportings out there. It's far, far more likely, as this club is, that they just let his deal run out.
Right.
So, again, there is a little space to accommodate those guys coming back, but it wouldn't shock me as if, neither one of them happen. I'm going to lean Sealy like Dan is right now. And I agree with the assessment that no way is Justin Jay coming back.
Yeah, I actually would be really interested to watch Justin Che play at his center back position for this club. I would love to see it and see where the progression could be, not whether now or moving forward. Because I thought, given the fact that he wasn't a right back, he had a great year. And showed a lot.
Yeah, but if you think about him walking into this team in the summer, he would walk in at best probably fourth
or fifth, right? Yep.
Which is not to say that he wouldn't rapidly climb it, perhaps, but this is not a club that's going to say to a kid who at center back, if you come back, you're a lock starter. They just brought in a guy at right back, so that's kind of out of the question, right? They clearly don't think that Che's coming back. And
he's probably not the backup left back right now either. So
maybe,
although
probably
he
not.
could, he's athletic enough, he could probably pull it off. But.
He is. Yep.
All right, next homegrown signing. I'm going to send this one over to Buzz because it's both his turn and also because, let's face it, this is your forte.
Yeah, the answer is Julian Eystone. He might be surprised to hear me say that. This
Goalkeeper?
kid is a generational keeper. So is Antonio Carrera. Nice problem to have.
He actually dressed as a backup for FC Dallas once this past year.
He did in
an emergency situation, right?
Yeah, it was not an MLS game, but it was like a cup game or something. I don't remember what it was.
Wasn't that against? I think it was
friendly.
against the team from Mexico.
Yeah, it was a friendly
against Tigres.
But, he's been on the bench for North Texas. He's yet to play for North Texas. But here's the thing: he's a smart kid. He accelerated his high school graduation by taking like AP classes and stuff. So he's graduating after his junior year of high school, and he has a ride to Duke. So he will actually go to Duke this fall.
Wow.
So at like 17, he'll go to Duke, play that fall season. So my prediction is next winter, we will see Eystone signed as a homegrown after having played one season at Duke. That's because he'll be a couple of months from 18, and it'll be time to sign him before he goes to Europe. So that's my next prediction for homegrown is Julian Eystone.
Dan, should we just defer, or do you want to take a swing at this one?
I mean, that is the answer.
Yep.
He's either going to be the next homegrown or he's going off to Europe. So.
Yep.
All right.
I do think the kid will take the one season like at Duke, like I said, because Owen, I think you know this. You can't go to Europe until you're 18. So by him accelerating his high school graduation, he's enabled himself to have that ride at Duke go play that one season and get that experience under his belt, that maturity under his belt, that independence under his belt. He'll spend the first half of this year on the bench behind Antonio Carrera with North Texas mostly. But Antonio's going to get this whole season of starts at North Texas, and then probably will be his last season as the full-time starter. So if you let Julian start for Duke for 20 games, sign him, come out, walk into the North Texas as the starter for 2024.
Interesting. Okay, let's move to the next thing, which is we'll start with Dan. the next North Texas player to move to the FC Dallas first team.
Ooh. Let's see. North Texas player.
Now, and Buzz, just for the sake of ground rules, I'm assuming that can include players that are signed by FC Dallas but spent a majority of, or if not all of last year at North Texas.
I suppose you could include those guys if you want to. That wasn't my intention, but if that's the way you want to turn
you're thinking
the
about
conversation.
Pure North Texas guys, not like, for example, Isaiah Parker or Antonio Carrick types.
Well, yes, but if you feel like there's not really a good candidate, I'd be happy to hear one of those guys as a discussion point.
Okay. Sorry, Dan. I just wanted to clarify that.
No, you're good. I'm going to say they end up doing like a weird loan arrangement of Pablo Torre.
Wow. That's a shout out right there. I'm going to go with Hope Aveyu. I keep wanting to call him Hope Kudzo because that's what he was when he first came. Hope Aveyu, who is a false wing and or playmaking free eight kind of player. I think that he will be like Kamungo was signed and Mulatto was signed this winter. I think next winter it'll be time for Hope to come in and perhaps fill that spot behind Sebastian Lletget, or if Lletget at that point, who's like will be becoming 32 or 33 or whatever, maybe there's somebody else has come in as a backup and that person becomes a starter and then Hope's behind him. But that's the shot for me.
Actually, I need to change my answer there. I forgot that Jose Mulatto existed. So there's no need to have Pablo Torre as an emergency loan striker.
Because Mulatto's the guy.
Yeah. And then you've got Birdie as well, who could also play. So
and so can Tariq Scott.
I'm still saying there's going to be an emergency in a pinch. So maybe Arenada as an emergency if they're short a centre back.
Wow.
Okay,
right.
So Hope was the one that I've heard the name of the most of the next group. I also, from talking to a couple of guys that are in the North Texas front office side of things, that there is a lot of turnover, right? And Buzz, this is nothing you don't know.
Yep.
If you don't stick and show a eventual path, you may have even said this on the podcast, so forgive me if I'm repeating you. If you don't stick immediately in one season at North Texas, unless you're part of the academy, and you don't prove immediately to show that you're, even if it's not ready right now, that you will be able to make that path, that progression to the first team, they wipe the slate and they bring in almost an entire new roster. So that's why my answer would be Antonio Carrera. And the reason why is that I know he's already signed for FC Dallas, but he's been down there. I think he's good enough, and he's still so young, but he will either be Martin Pas's backup sooner than later. No offense, Jimmy Mauer's phenomenal, and you probably want to keep him, but it might be like Kyle Zobek kind of thing where you have your third keeper, but Carrera starts getting named to the 20 a little bit more frequently. I just wonder if he might be ready to be in that role faster than Isaiah Parker.
He might be, and Jimmy's 35 into next season,
right?
Like October.
Well, so and if you get an injury or something, right?
Yeah, starting to get up there. That's a fair shout. Just to follow up on what you're saying, you're correct. They have 5 players under contract right now.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, 4 of them are getting a second season. That shows you how many of them that they signed last year are gone. One of them, Hope, is in season 3. He was an unusual player, and that he got a longer contract when they signed him at 18. Torres, the striker Dan was referring to, same deal. He had a longer deal than usual, which usually indicates that they have more interest in your long-term upside and less like your burn and churn. But so of those 4 guys, Dan mentioned one of them. You also have Andre Costas, a solid player. There's not a whole lot, though. Yeah.
Okay. We move to the other part of North Texas, which is something that you guys spent a lot of time talking about, the whole structure of MLS Next Pro. Will MLS Next Pro improve in 2023?
Who's up?
And this belongs to Dan.
It's somehow going to get worse.
I was waiting for it.
Yeah, I actually completely agree. I think it'll be worse in 2023. This is one of those things where it's going to...
why?
It's going to take a while for it to get better. Then it's going to get worse in the short run. The reason is because there's not enough independent clubs. The MLS teams are at that level are all interested in development. That means they're almost all going young, sometimes younger than others. Some of them, it's almost like a U19 team. You need more independent teams that are going to be more interested in winning. They're going to have guys that are older.
With the 30-year-olds, yeah.
With the 30-year-olds, with the Gibran Rayos, who are now 23, 24. These middle of their real career kind of guys that are playing to win and playing to get into the USL Championship, for example. So until you add 10 of those teams, until then, you'll see less guys going down like Nicky Hernandez's or Khalil El-Madkouris. You didn't see those guys going down. Those guys will be going down less across the board. Across the board, it'll look more like a U23 or even U20 league. So it'll be worse over the next 2 or 3 seasons as they try and continue to add independent teams. And then 4 or 5 years down the road, it'll start to get better finally.
It'll be really interesting to see in that window in 5 years from now where it's at. I think you're right. And that'll be really interesting once there's more establishment of that league, because I think you either was last week's pod or the one from 2 weeks ago where you said that it feels like they're still figuring out what they're doing.
Absolutely.
Even this year. And that's why it would, I mean, as you guys said, Dan said you're going to get worse. That's probably why, because they still don't know what they're doing with it yet.
Yeah, Dallas had a better setup 2 years ago with USL 1. This is now worse for them.
Right.
And as a consequence, I think you can see like 5 or 6 guys go on loan this year because of this gap.
To go to the championship for better
to get
competition.
games at a better level, because there's no point in sending guys down to North Texas anymore. I mean, like Colin Smith and Isaiah Parker both probably should never play there again.
Right.
They may both have to, some at the start of the season.
Well, wouldn't you think that even Antonio Carrera would benefit from a higher level of play?
You would, but it's okay to give him one more season starting, because starting as a goalie is big, but even more, having him in first team training every day is really big.
Yes.
Until he's ready to, until Antonio is ready to walk in and start in a USL Championship team, or until he's ready to be the number 2 with FC Dallas, it's okay to do the first team training, because the value of training for a keeper is so much higher than
and working with Drew Keyshawn every day. That would be
really
big.
One of the best goalkeeper coaches in the league, 100%. Yeah.
All right, Buzz, you get to lead this one off, and I have to preface this with our apologies sincerely to my broadcast partner, Steve Davis. Buzz, what will the new 2023 FC Dallas kit look like?
Steve, check back in 2 minutes.
Or 5.
So, here's what I'll tell you. It'll be powder blue in some capacity, because the current kit we call the NATO kit, the Tornado Blue kit, Ranger Blue kit, is the best-selling secondary kit they've ever had. And they believed that if it hadn't been for supply issues, it would have been their best-selling kit, period. So they will keep that color scheme. So my outlandish prediction is that they anticipated Messi and Argentina being really good, and they're going to have a blue and white hoop. In the Argentina colors, blue and white hoop. That's my prediction.
Oh my God, that would be amazing.
Would it not? Would be great.
Dan, you want to add to that, or
no? My brain just exploded. Wow,
is amazing that all you want to add? That's fine.
So Argentina's rugby team actually plays in those blue and white hoops.
They do.
So yeah, that'd be wow. Oh my God, wow.
You're welcome, Dan.
Yeah, just don't come back to me for the rest of the pod.
No, that's good. Dan, you get to lead the next question off then. Will one of the FC Dallas picks, I'm assuming super draft picks, make the MLS team?
Starting, or
just make the roster?
They make the roster.
Get a contract.
Yeah, I guess whoever the first pick was, I guess, just for the sake of it. Endley, because they're talking about him converting to right back.
Yeah, I'm actually going to say no. I think because they signed Giovanni, that it just became incredibly difficult for Endley to make the team, because they also signed Tariq Scott, because Dante Seeley might be coming back this summer, because they moved up Amar Kamungo. Those at the wing and the back are where this kid plays. I think it's going to be virtually impossible for him to make the first team. Now, if you start doing the math and there's an open slot on the bottom, maybe there's a shot that he gets that spot, but he will. If he gets signed, he'll play the whole season with North Texas for sure. I think it's actually fairly likely they just might offer him a flat out North Texas contract, maybe even one of these new hybrid contracts where you start with North Texas and then a couple years later it kicks in for FC Dallas perhaps. So I'm going to say 30% chance he gets it and 0% chance on the other two guys.
For me, it's just that there's 4 spots open, 2 on the reserve roster. It's hard, it's getting increasingly hard to fill those reserve roster spots. So, just for bodies, it may be worth them.
Potentially. Remember,
out.
They need 2 center backs still. One is going to be young and take one of those spots. One is going to be older and take that first team spot. The last 4 or 5 years, they've not filled all 18. It's all 20 spots on the senior roster. They've left 2 of them open. You probably need some room maybe for Sealy or Che to come back, maybe for guys to come up from North Texas. I just think I think you're right. There's a chance that bottom spot's available for him. That's why I'm like at 30%. But it's going to be long, man. He's going to really have to show in the camp.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you in that.
And
I think
show
the
better
answer
than Colin Smith.
I think the answer is no. I think that unless somebody absolutely goes out of their mind in this 6-week training camp, other than that, the answer is no. I think you might see a couple of them get a shot at North Texas with the idea that a year there and then maybe see where they're at. But here's the other question, because again, and we'll get to a little bit more about the other aspect I want to bring up, but I'm going to save it for our next question. Or actually, it's about 2 questions away, but because there's another reason why I think a striking and attacking player might have a spot 6 months to 12 months from now, where it isn't right now. But
possibly,
I just think that there's not enough space. The question is, will those guys be content accepting a MLS Next Pro spot, or are they going to say, hey, we played on a really, really top level Division I team that went all the way to the Collegiate Cup? Would they say, we think we can play at the USL Championship level and go looking elsewhere?
I just think back to the picks that Dallas has had over the last 3 or 4 years, and I think only one has said, I'll go USL, and that was Cal Jennings, who admittedly was taken, like 17th or something, and he had come out of college as the leading scorer in the NCAA that year, I think it was. So I don't think either one of these top Indiana guys is that. Most of those guys will be like, okay, I'll play a season at North Texas and see what happens.
Sure.
As Dan shouted Colin Smith, I totally forgot about that too. So really there's 4 guys. Endley's looking at being one of 4 guys competing for right back. And that's, and there's guys coming through the academy too soon. Other than that, you got to look at Malachi Molina, who's probably, maybe a year and a half from being in the homegrown window. So that's a really difficult position. Granted, they picked this guy because they saw something they liked. This is the diamond in the rough category. This is the same sort of area of the draft that Siki was in. So it could be that he comes into camp and just kills it. They did flat out say that they're going to evaluate him in camp and see if they think he could be a right back conversion or whether he might help them more at wing. So there is some wing possibility there for him. So it's going to be on him. He's going to have to. This is one of the things we talk about sometimes with the MLS team is there's no gift spots. You have to play well enough to force somebody out, to force your way into a spot. And this kid's going to have to do that. He's going to have to beat out 3 other players and maybe 5 other players if you want to count wing to try and get a spot.
A very welcome to the pros kind of
welcome to
initiation,
the bigs, buddy.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we go to the next one, which is, will we see 10 plus FC Dallas sellouts in 2023 at Toyota Stadium? And that we begin at Buzz.
Yes. I think they get 10 plus this year. I think that there's some real positive momentum happening with the change in the expenditures the organization has done across the board post Pepe's sale. Almost virtually every phase of the organization has improved, and it clearly paid off in the stands last year. I think the new VP of marketing, we call him new, now he's been there a year. I think his momentum will continue, and the rise will continue. The population growth of Frisco continues. I think you're looking at over 10 sellouts this year.
Yeah, 100%. I think even like historically, we know DFW is a town that favors winning seasons. You can kind of discard 2017. That's when they ripped out half or the south end, and the capacity dropped. But after the MLS Cup run, the average attendance went up 2,000 the next season. They had 8 sellouts. eight, verging on legitimate sellouts. We do not, Jerome's done some phenomenal work. And hey, it was at the Mavericks, and the Mavericks, even when there wasn't a sellout, they'd tell you there was a sellout. So
Yeah.
I think there'll be I think there'll be 10 legitimate sellouts.
Yeah, I think as you said, Dan, Jerome, I've had a chance to talk to him a few times since he came to FC Dallas, and I love what he's doing already, and they're just going to continue that with the positive momentum that they've built, and it's going to be easier for the front office to make decisions to help him even bolster his efforts because of the successes that they've seen from his campaigns and efforts. And it's, as Buzz, you said, it's not just marketing with Jerome and his staff, but it's everybody in all of the areas have had an infuse. It started with the Pepe sale, and now all of a sudden there's more resources with other things that they can do that they never had before.
Yep.
And then it worked. And the crowds were great. The playoff atmosphere, even though I had to watch it on TV, was phenomenal. And to steal Buzz's word, and it's something that I think that the only thing that was disappointing was they couldn't get another home game right after that because they were ready to just keep building on it. So I'm really excited to see what they do, and hopefully the weather cooperates. As we know, Texas weather never does, but if they get a couple, especially early in the season, where if it's like it's been right now, which is ridiculous for early January, but feels like spring, then they're going to come out in spades. Now, you get one of those days where it rains for 5 hours in a row and you have a lightning delay. That could sort of damage all of that. But fingers crossed, I think that they're going to be able to surpass 10.
So I guess just to add on as well, they're going to do, 6 drone shows this year? Mm-hmm. Good out. So their budget is definitely increasing.
And those are really cool, aren't they?
And they bring so many people.
Yeah.
I spoke to Dan Hunt after the Austin game, just about the fans that were there, because there was the whole thing about 300 tickets, and by the time the club took its allocation, it normally doesn't come out of that because Austin wouldn't give them the usual. There was only 130 some for fans. Well, there were several hundred FC Dallas fans in that stadium. There were pockets of red everywhere. And he said to me that they've never had the interest in suites, that they've never had the renewal rates, that everything is on such a massive uptick for them right now.
That's great.
The good thing with that is the people come, the money comes, the budget gets bigger. Yep. That's the way soccer works.
Amen.
I'm with you on that. Okay, let's go to the next one, which is one that kind of was hinting at when we were talking about one of the super draft picks of a striker maybe making the roster, and that's will Franco Jara be on the FC Dallas squad to start the season? And I believe we go to Dan to start that one.
On the roster to start the season, yes, he will. He will have his half season here and be well remembered by some.
I agree with Dan. My unofficial calculation is that FC Dallas owes him about $1 million for those 6 months. So I think that there will not be, the club is interested in him back home. I think they're not interested enough in him to pay what it would take to get him out of here now, because it would take some kind of hunt and buyout or, a loan with some kind of money going different ways. I just don't see that's still a little too much money for this organization to swallow. It's too much money for an individual to pass up for 6 months of work. So I agree that despite the fact that I think everybody would love for it to happen now, and I think there are ways to make it happen now, I don't think they'll be able to. I think they're looking at waiting till June.
Yeah, and I think that the what you just referenced, the people would love for it to happen now, especially the fans, is more because of what you can do with those resources elsewhere.
Yeah.
Because as we've talked at length in the last podcast I was on, and also just off air in talking at the stadium and everywhere else we bump into each other, is that the change in Franco Jara's the reliance of the roster or of the team on him has changed dramatically with the evolution of Ricardo Pepi and then Jesus Ferrer, where, Jara to come off the bench and be a support role is fine, other than you wish it wasn't at that price point. But
Yeah.
I don't think that it's enough of a problem for 6 months. And if anything, it'll give them time to hit that summer window, knowing they'll have some money to play with.
Yeah, he's a consummate pro. His biggest value actually is his training habits and his willingness to impart things to young strikers. He's influenced Jesus and Pepe and Alan Velasco. Alan Velasco loves him some Franco Jara. He's like a mentor to him, like an older brother to him, because same country and all that. So his fellow understands the culture of adapting and all that stuff. Franco knows how to be a pro. He's been around the block. All that's good for Alan. There's lots to like about him on the team. Again, it's just about freeing up playing time for Mulata, who's now come through, freeing up that money so you can get working on whatever you're going to do, probably a center back in the summer. There's lots of reasons why you go ahead and do it now. Again, it's not as negative as people think it is to keep him around for the summer. And so that's why I think you're not going to throw millions of dollars away just to get rid of the guy when you can just wait till June. And then this club likes to wait. They don't like to go early.
And honestly, if I would have loved, and we can't ever do this, I would have loved to have seen if they had pounced on Franco Jara and bought him in, 2017?
Yeah, well, that's what
the
they
U.S. Open in the CONCACAF Champions League, when they really I would have loved to have seen this new version of FC Dallas's front office attack the transfer window and get Jara then in his he would have been 27, I think, or 28, 29, somewhere. That I would have loved to have seen the attitude, the professionalism with a guy that has a little bit more pace still in his game. That would have been really fun. But yeah, no, he's fine now, and in fact, I think that he still brings enough that it'll be what it is.
Yeah, if I'm firing up a time machine, I'm going to go get 24-year-old Funes Mori.
Yeah, probably more so than 27-year-old Franco Jara. So
not that Franco Jara's not fine, but he was never fast. And Funes Mori with the hometown connection and it
would have been cool.
It would have been cool, but there's many reasons why it never was going to be Funes Mori and never will be Funes Mori. But if I had a time machine, that'd be the one.
Okay, so we are getting down towards the end of this, but we still have 4 left, and we go to Buzz for predict one interesting or meaningful jersey number change.
All right, I'm going to go out on a limb with this one. You remember that there was a whole Jimmy Maurer sticking with the higher number. He didn't want to go to 1 because he was going to build on what he'd done. And then last year he went to 1 and it didn't go so hot. So I'm going to predict that Jimmy flips back to, 20, and that Martin Paz takes the 1 jersey.
You don't think Paz will build with 30 and enjoy it?
No, I don't think he would care about 30.
You think 30 is a weird number for a goalkeeper?
30 is actually usually the number they give to the third string keeper around these parts more often than not.
Well, we'll find out how superstitious Martin Paz is, because he had a heck of a season, so he might want to stick with it, but he might not care at all.
Yeah, he might not care. He might be an I don't care guy. If you're into numbers, Antonio Carrera is a hardcore 13 for a keeper guy. That's his number for life, and he was ecstatic that he was able to get that as a homegrown.
A 13 for my family is very important. Both my mom and dad were born on the 13th of their respective birth months, so they got married on the 13th. So we've always, as our family, celebrated that number, not shied away from it. So I'm all in favor of somebody that wants to wear 13 and doesn't look over their shoulder because of superstition. So, Dan, what do you think about jersey numbers? Anything fun or interesting as a predictive change?
Jesus Ferrer changed his number for the 4th or 5th season running.
It's still trying to chase that record, huh?
You know it. No, I'm trying to think. Maybe Jesus decides. Yeah, maybe Jesus decides to pick up the 11, and then Paxton slips into the 10 or something like that.
See, I would think that my guess is that if you look at the traditional positional numbers, right, the one that I wonder about, and Buzz, you're probably going to shoot this down right away, is anyone going to get the 24, or is that off limits now forever?
No, it's
which
not
was
off
now
limits.
vacated by Matt Hedges.
It's not off limits because you don't really retire numbers in soccer. And
That's right.
Is more often than not, 24 is not necessarily like a That's a number that gets assigned to rookies and
Well,
Hedges.
that's what I'm wondering. What happens if we go from 380 some odd appearances or whatever the number is now, Matt Hedges, to the fifth string center back gets 24?
Yeah, that's basically what will happen. I mean, Hedges
Does
never
Nolan
really,
Norris get 24, perhaps?
Hedges never really picked 24. It just was assigned to him, and then he kind of stuck with it. So I don't think there was a heavy drive for like that was like a number that was like, oh, I mean, there's some good numbers available. 2 is available, 9 is available, for example, 11's available. 14's a really good number that's available. By the way, just to tag Antonio Carrera, he's a big Choa fan. Mexico's a Choa 13. That's why the 13, because he wears 13.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah, so that's his idol. So there's some good numbers available. I love Dan's Jesus switching back to 9 or something.
Changing again.
Yeah, that would be exciting. That'd be fun.
The one that I actually think is, aside from Hedges, just out of tongue in cheek, is I'm actually interested to see what Bernard Kamungo takes this year, because he was given a number last year, and if you go to their website on their roster page,
right?
There's nothing. Yeah, it was 77, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
he's one of the 5 or 6 or 7 players that have yet to have a number issued on their website roster page, along with Jesus, Mulatto, Seeley, who has sort of had his number taken away, and so they didn't give him another one, and then Nolan Norris and Tariq Scott. So I just wonder if Kamungo sticks with it, because he can't have 7, because Paul Arriola is not going to give that up.
Yeah,
Does he go with
Kamungo.
Does he go with 77, or is he going to try something like 9 or 11 or something like that?
He might, but he would be low down the order in terms of who would get to pick.
Right.
If Seeley comes back, he can have his 31 back. That's what his dad wore. That's why he wore it.
You think anyone else is going to want 31?
Well, Nanu
Michelle.
had it. So Michelle, Nanu had
Touche.
it. What you'll see happen is guys will get offered numbers that are valuable starting kind of players, guys that have been here for a couple of seasons.
Sure.
If they choose to change. If Brandon once was an 8, but so if O'Brien were to leave now, he might see Brandon go for 8
from 18.
Paxton won't stay. Paxton will stay at 19. I already talked to him about that.
Well, that's such a special thing for him and Bobby Ryan and their
different
family.
circumstances. But you could see I could see Martin Paz trying to jump to a higher number, even if Jimmy stays at 1. Maybe Martin might say, "Oh, give me something better than that." Velasco at 20. Would Velasco say, "Go give me the 10, Jesus, you can have 9," or maybe 11. 11 is a left wing number. That's a great number for Alan Velasco, and it's available. There's some things like that. I'd be far more likely than Kamungo. Kamungo would be very low in the totem pole. I could see him not staying in 77. I could see him saying, "Give me, 21 or something." Whatever it could be. That's a more legitimate squad number than 77.
Right.
But again, maybe he's so married to 7 that he wants 77. That would be perfectly.
And that'd be okay
understandable
too.
if
As
he
you
is.
see in MLS rosters, they'll go all the way to 99 and not ask Wayne Gretzky if he agrees or not. So
Well, they won't ask me because I hate it. I won't let people do that. I make him stay under 30.
there you
But,
go.
In FC Dallas parlance, rookies, draft picks, homegrowns, they get stuck in the high 20s. Homegrowns will have a little bit of a leg up. They might get some teens if it's available, but guys that will want to switch will get first choice. Guys that are under contract, for a while will get choices over homegrowns for the most part. Giovanni will get a choice at a good number because he's a legitimate top senior
I could see
roster
him
player.
getting 2.
He could be 2 for sure. Right
If he
back
wanted
2.
it,
That
right?
makes if he wants
Makes
it,
a
that
lot
makes
of
all the
sense.
sense in the world.
Yeah.
Those are the kinds of things you can see happening. If somebody decides they want to shift, I don't really see anybody jumping out at me other than maybe Martin Paz saying, "You can give me a number better than 30." That's pretty much like the third keeper number in Dallas. As a matter of fact, I don't think it's ever been worn by anything but a keeper, and it's almost always the third keeper.
Dan, we go to the next one. Will Ligas Cup be a success?
No, it'll be crap.
Oh, crap. Wow.
Really?
Yeah, I
And
just
why?
think they're putting too much emphasis on nothing. It's banking on the 2 or 3 big name Mexican teams making money with the handful of big name MLS clubs, while the rest of everyone's just going to be like, why are we here? I just I don't see. Every time you see the FC Dallas the potential FC Dallas pairings, and it's like, oh, it's Toluca or Mazatlan or Juarez. Yeah, that's great. That's going to attract all of 2,000 people.
I'm going to go say it will be a success because I think the Mexican clubs are going to want to take it very seriously, and they're going to want to make market in the United States, and that they will all come in and roll out their big guns and proceed to raffle stomp everybody in MLS. And it'll piss off enough MLS teams that the one or two that happen to survive will take it pretty seriously after that and realize that they got a battle on their hands. So I don't think it'll be as successful as MLS playoffs are, but I think that there will be a certain amount of attention drawn to it in a year when there is a Gold Cup, but there's no big European Cup or anything, right? That's next year.
Trying to remember when the Women's World Cup schedule is compared to, like, will they be going head to head with that? Because it's in Australia, and I think that will draw significant attention in the United States because, of course, the U.S. women's national team is so good,
but only U.S. games,
right?
Owen. Like the average women's
fair
World Cup,
point.
Nobody
Yes.
cares. It's only the U.S. games. Yeah.
So here's what I think will happen with Liga's Cup if it's executed the way that you're talking about, Buzz. I think it will be because you could see that, not for the diehard soccer fans, of which we all are, but the casual sports fans in the summertime in the United States, where there's no hockey, no basketball, no football, and baseball. And look, the Rangers are making a little push in this area, but again, baseball is not what it used to be, at least when I was growing up, as far as its national popularity. I think this is an opportunity for them to really latch on with no Euros, right? Because that's a year later.
Yep.
Could really, I think we see an appetite for a casual sports fan who understands a World Cup style tournament better than, say, a 38-game regular season and then playoffs, and just say, hey, this is all well contained within about a month. I can get excited. And it might be timed just perfectly after the World Cup, because I've had people, even in the last week, say, I'm craving soccer right now because I watched the World Cup and it was great. And you go, there's a lot of options if you know the streaming services and TV that they show in Europe, but this could be one that really attracts a larger audience.
Okay, Gold Cup is mid-June to mid-July. Leagues Cup is mid-July to mid-August.
It's perfect.
Women's World Cup is mid-July to mid-August.
Okay.
So it'll be at the same time as the Women's World Cup. But again, I'll contend that in this country, the only games on average that the soccer fan or the sport fan will care about, women's soccer fans, yes, but your average MLS fan, your average Liga MX fan, they're only going to care about Mexico games, U.S. games. I don't even know if Mexico's in the Women's World Cup, to be fair. I don't know the answer to that question. So I think there's a chance. I mean, I think if the marketing is right, and given I think the Mexican teams are going to take it seriously, I think there's a window of opportunity to attract some attention, which is what they want. They want, in particular, the Mexican teams they want media attention, and there's a chance that it'll do that. More teams than the CONCACAF Champions League, which gets spread out, which has games in Mexico.
Right.
Maybe there's a chance for better understanding in the American audience.
That's the point I was trying to make. Is that CONCACAF Champions League is too spread out, and so it's hard for the casual fan to follow, whereas this is a 3-nation club tournament, right? Canadian, American, Mexican, and it's going to be really, everyone's all contained within this 1 month or so. I think there's a very good chance of success.
And it looks like a World Cup, which everyone now understands that works. Right. So it's like a pro team World Cup. I get it, right? So there's a casualness appeal perhaps there. Dan could be totally right. It could totally suck. But I just think there's a chance that it might actually be interesting to people beyond myself.
The last, the semifinals and finals will be popular. I just think that group stage is going to be a grind.
There could be some rough ones in there, yeah. For sure.
It'll be like those Gold Cup doubleheaders at Toyota Stadium when it's like Costa Rica versus Haiti and there's 100 people in the stadium.
Right, and that doesn't mean there won't be a match or two or so in the group stage around that we'll go, that didn't really do much. But I think the overall could still be very successful in spite of that.
I hope it is.
Okay, so let's go. Buzz, you get to lead off this one. Other than Jesus Ferreira, will an FC Dallas player make the Gold Cup roster?
Yeah, I think the obvious one is Paul Areola will.
Yep.
Remember that Gold Cup, it's not January camp where we're looking for super fringe. Gold Cup is 1.5 to 2.5 maybe. It's not the number one grade A World Cup team, but it's players 15 to 30 maybe, So Areola will be involved in that, probably as a leadership role in that. He's a guy that the coach, if it is the same coach, even if it's a new coach, he's a guy that will be a good leader for guys there could be some new faces in there, might be some young faces. He's a relatively veteran kind of guy. So I think Paul Areola is a no-brainer. I think good chance if Paxson maintains his form, good chance Paxson Pomykal could be in a Gold Cup team. Jesus is a no-brainer. Of course, he falls in that same category. Yep. Pepe's probably a no-brainer.
Yeah, I agree with that. Dan, do you have somebody else that other than what Buzz suggested? Because Areola seems like the odds-on favorite to join Jesus in that roster.
I was going to go with Paxton as kind of one of those. He's kind of a young veteran player, which is those guys that seem to get the nod as the outside can come in, do a job when you've got the exclusively MLS based rosters.
I got a dark horse for you. How about Farfan?
I was waiting for Dan to say that because last week you brought him up in that capacity.
If he starts next year,
he's had a camp invite before as well. I think he's had a cap before.
His shortcoming, of course, is a little bit of the getting forward part, but the defensive part's really good. Later in the year with FC Dallas last year, he showed a little more offense. Obviously, he burned out a little towards the end of the season, but if he's fresh first half of the season, has a little bit more of that offense in his game, maybe there's a window there. I'm not suggesting it's a lock by any means, but it wouldn't shock me if Dallas is in the top part of the standings and he's looking really good. Dark horse that he might get a sniff. Maybe January camp for him. Maybe that might be a little too early, but a lot is going to be dependent on his form next year.
Yeah, I like that idea. The one other one that I'll throw out there that it's too early, but in a couple of years he's going to probably be in real contention is Antonio Carrera.
Yeah, that'll take longer.
It's going to take longer, but again, he's already in the mix in the youth national team fold. I think he was at U19s last year when Tigres came and played that friendly, which is why you had Julian come up and fill in as Martin Paz's backup or whatever because Jimmy was hurt.
Antonio's likely to be in the U20 team.
Wasn't Jimmy playing for North? I'm getting confused now of who was where, but it was either Mauer's either hurt or he filled in at North Texas so that Julian came and backed up Martin Paz for Tigres.
Jimmy went and started for North Texas, and Pomykal sat on the bench. Not Pomykal, sorry. Eyestone sat on the bench.
That's what it was.
Antonio is in the U20 team for the United States. I think, based on the selections I've been watching, that he's looking like he's the second choice keeper for the U20s. So that kind of gives you a ballpark where he is. He's considered.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking maybe 4 or 5 years from now.
Yeah, he's in the upper echelon of keepers at his age group, just as Eyston is probably second or third at the U17 level right now.
He's also going to have to contend with Gaga Slanina as he develops too, which is going to be a really tough one because of where he's going to over in England.
Yeah, you're looking at those guys needing to get to be like 25, 26 before they really start to press for national team time. So obviously when you're talking about as many as 8 or 9 or 10 years from now, when those guys are really going to be in contention, so much is going to change. It's so hard to know. They're at the pinnacle of keepers in their age groups each. So good a chance as anybody. Long way to go.
All right. I can think of no one better to lead off this final question than the guy that watches more England national team matches than U.S. men's national team. So we begin with Dan. Will the U.S. win the Gold Cup this coming summer?
Yeah, screw it. Why not? No, I think, the U.S. has got a little bit of a... I don't know. This new cycle coming in. It's the cycle before the 2026. It's almost like the national team has a little bit to prove about itself. You've got kind of what seems like an increasingly aging Mexico team, ever increasing number of players for them in Europe after the World Cup. Are they going to want to go with the full B team and let those players kind of rest up a little more than they have in previous years. Just, yeah, why not?
Buzz, are you with Mr. Sunshine and Optimism over there?
No.
Screw you,
Yeah. Canada.
commie.
Yeah, I wondered if you were going to say that.
Canada's. It ain't gonna be Mexico. Canada's gonna win the Gold Cup this summer. They have if they keep their current coach, that is, they have a good team concept. They would relish the chance to win that thing for the second time. They last won it when Martin Nash, Steve Nash's brother, was their key midfielder, one of their key midfielders. So I think there's a couple other teams that are going to come up in the next few years out of CONCACAF. Mexico's in a down window. The U.S. will be running their A.5, B sort of team. Canada will bring their big team. They'll bring their full team, I think, maybe minus the Germany. Oh my Lord,
Alphonso Davies.
yes, thank you. Well,
Yep.
ridiculous. Maybe minus
You
him.
had me at Germany.
Yeah, you knew who I meant. Playing for
Yes, I
Bayern
did.
Munich, arguably the best left back in the world.
If they leave him out, then that leaves them more exposed. They're a good team, and I like their team
Yeah.
concepts. But if they don't have Alphonso Davies, I think the U.S. is the favorite to win.
I
that.
think he comes. I think they don't maybe go gangbusters with him like in the early rounds when they want
like starting him instead of putting him on the bench and
Yeah.
giving him 20
don't,
minutes.
Don't burn him out, because it'll be
Yeah.
the summer for him. He'll be fine as long as he's healthy. That is, I think they have, even without him, they have a good team concept. They have a couple of guys along in the tooth that may be moving on, but it's only one or two. They're most of their core is in like MLS level, maybe high USL level. So I'm going to go with Canada being in. They're going to want to rebound from their World Cup and prove that they were better than their record showed, and they're going to look at the Gold Cup as a chance to make a statement. So I got Canada winning the Gold Cup.
I'm going to pick the U.S. because I think that as we show that dysfunction and drama are not exclusive to big European and South American and Mexican national teams, that we can do it too. Although you see that and then go back to 98, there was plenty of both back there as they went to France. So, yeah, I think that this team is really deep. There are players that didn't even make the roster for the World Cup. Ahem, Ricardo Pepi, Paul Arriola, etc. Maybe Haji Wright decides to show what everybody else doesn't understand, which is why he made the roster. Maybe it's
he's
Ricardo
friends with
Pepi who
Pulisic.
shows he should have been there, right?
Dan knows. Pulisic will
But
be
either
hurt,
way,
though. He'll
I
be on
think-
the Gold Cup team.
I think the U.S. pool is deep enough now,
Yeah.
deeper than they've ever been, as far as the talent beyond just the guys that were the starters at the World Cup. I think they're the team to beat, and
like
they're going to win it.
I like it.
So I am the rah-rah guy, so that's what I'm going to do.
All right.
Fellas, we have reached the end of our list of questions, and
Yeah.
at
We're
the
now
risk,
taking off the cuff ad lib.
that's what I'm saying. At the risk of adding to another hour or so of our podcast, is
Yeah.
there anything you'd like to ad lib here at the end? I think that was quite extensive.
That was pretty good. I think that was I don't really have anything else to myself, Dan, if you got anything.
Nah. Nothing shy of the predictions later in preseason.
Yeah.
I'll have one more for you guys real quick just because it's funny and I
Hit it.
actually want to watch it. This is obscure. It's not great for an FC Dallas podcast, but it will maybe tickle our English buddy here. Will either of you care or watch Wrexham Coventry City FA Cup, which is tomorrow in third round, and we can actually watch it?
The FA Cup.
Yeah.
There you go.
What
'Cause
time's the game?
I want to say it's around 10 or 11. I'd have to
I'll
look
be
it
on my
up.
way to work.
But no, it's the one of those where I've watched the documentary. It's fun, and I want to see if a National League team can beat a championship side and keep on going as a giant killer. I think it'd be a lot of
No.
fun.
Yeah, no,
But I
they're
don't
both
think it's gonna
11:30 kickoffs, so I'll be watching Luton on ESPN Plus.
Yeah.
There you have it. So go get them, Wrexham. I would love to see them have to go to Anfield and play Liverpool because it's not far from Wrexham up to the northwest of England, and
Yeah.
I'd love to see the Reds.
I
I'd
love
say
that.
crush them, but
I'm with you. I love that show. I now have a very great fondness for Wrexham.
Yeah.
But listen, you have to be clear. That level is horrendous.
Oh, I
the
understand.
Fifth division in England, and It's barely better than MLS Next Pro. I think the
That's not.
Wrexham would be a pretty good team in USL 1, but they would get lit by almost everybody in the USL Championship here in the United States. It is so slow.
Dan, your rebuttal.
That's no. They would be a lower mid-table USL Championship team, but the level. I mean, you think USL 1, the players that come over from the UK and Ireland are the guys that can't, that are typically bombed out of the National League and are kind of looking for that last chance to get paid.
Maybe, man.
I'm not telling. It's not maybe. That's the players.
I
would love
you.
to
I'm
see.
just saying that the Wrexham I've seen play on TV is bottom end of USL Championship at best, in my opinion.
I mean, the problem you get is, and it's kind of the wonderful thing about the FA Cup, is you don't see representative football. The whole thing about the form goes out the window. Absolutely. I mean. Yeah, I remember Luton. We're in administration. All the players have been sold off. We're probably the worst team in England, professional team in England at this point. And we went to Anfield and outplayed them for 44 minutes. Then got beat 5-0.
This was
like this was 2005. So this was like Steven Gerrard, Sami Hyypiä. This was the team that went on to win.
Wasn't
a
that
Champions League?
The Xabi Alonso midfield goal, or from
that
his own
was
half?
Actually,
or was that
2
a different
seasons
Luton town?
before?
Okay, so I remember in my brain Xabi scoring from like the back of the center circle.
Yes, and some guy
Against Luton.
won a bet that he would do that. There would be. I think it was that he would score 2 goals from his own half in a season, and somehow did it.
Yes, he did, because he did it again. Oh gosh,
I think it was against Newcastle.
I'd have to look it up now. It's not the Luton one. Always stands out. Sorry, Dan.
No, that was a great game of football. We were 3-1 up. They came back 5-3. That was that was one of the best games I've ever seen.
See, Buzz, I told you with an ad-lib question I was going to take them off the rails, and I did. So.
Yeah, it's perfectly fine.
I loved it. But thank you guys for having me. I was even more excited this time because instead of reaching out and saying, hey, kind of inviting myself in a passive way, you guys asked me, which means I must have done something right the last time. So that was really fun to get that the text earlier in the week. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, you've joined us before. I'm always happy to have guests that are knowledgeable, and obviously you do a phenomenal job and are capable of actually being the host, which is really nice. I obviously don't want to burn you out either and ask you to do like 10 episodes.
There you go.
When you're not beholden to us in any way. But in a case like this, I thought you'd make a nice addition when we can go through all these questions and you could bounce it around for us to keep us on point rather than Dan and I stumbling in the dark as we do when we don't have a host.
Third Degree, the podcast, is brought to you by soccer90.com. Third Degree listeners get 20% off when you shop at soccer90.com for all your FC Dallas, U.S. national team, international club gear. Man, they've got everything. Soccer90's got all your stuff. Jersey scarves, jerseys, tees. I said jerseys like 5 times in this ad because they got lots of jerseys. You should buy jerseys there. You should use our code. Makes us look good. Soccer90.com, code Third Degree, just like the website, 3RDDEGREE, at checkout, 20% off your order.
On that note, we'll tie a bow. Dan, Buzz, welcome to 2023.
Woo! Woo! Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree Net Podcast. 25 long hard years, yeah. Was Carrick, yeah, the man. 25 years, you better be giving this man at least $5 a month. Patreon Third Degree, come on, pay the man. It's the only comprehensive coverage of my fucking club that I love so much. Hey, come on, it's Third Degree or bust. Yes, give the man some money. Hey, Third Degree
if I can.